3 data points to identify 98% of the population of the United States. You need a birth date, you need a gender, and what was the other? A zip code. Zip code. And with that, with only those 3 pieces of information, with 100% accuracy, he was able to, down to the person, identify 100% of the students he looked at. They're collecting 400 pieces of data on our kids. I've seen one survey that was slipped to me where they asked their height, their weight, their grade, their class. How could you not know the kid? History was distorted, and right and wrong were determined by government goals. I promise you, I had a principal in Williamson County look my husband and I in the eye when we tried to show them some very clearly inaccurate textbook information, and we were told, well, of course the information is wrong, all the textbooks have errors, but it's what we have to teach because it's on the test at the end of the year. So you know that it's wrong. Well, they all have problems, and that doesn't bother you. Well, it's on the test. Well, you know, unless Jesus is writing these tests, they don't deserve that kind of loyalty, I'm sorry. Students were used to spy on teachers. There's another survey that the kids got that asks, does your teacher push you? Does your teacher want you to go to college? Keep in mind, prior to that, the kids were shown videos telling them in Williamson County, too many people go to college. You need to consider being a laborer. In that same survey, students are asked, how many books are in the room where you sleep at night? How many children sleep in the place where you stay? Guess what? Exactly none of their business. And there's another one that, in violation of Pupil Protection Rights Act, goes on to ask them how many sexual partners they've had, and a litany of fairly graphic sexual practices. The youth grew increasingly arrogant, disrespectful, and sometimes even violent, because they began to understand their ability to report adults and that their teachers could do little to nothing about their behavior. And in fact, under the positive behavioral intervention supports that comes in under Race to the Top and is sort of aligned with Common Core, it requires a 50% reduction in discipline referrals. So you can't even report them when they're out of control. And under the Excellence in Education Act, and especially under the Excellence in African American Education, it specifically forbids disciplining any one race at a rate that is statistically higher than any others, regardless of offense. Regardless of offense. And in fact, one of their evaluations on what it means, and this is coming from the Department of Ed, it says, well, we understand that initially this may mean that Asians or white students could receive suspensions or expulsions for offenses which other minorities may receive no discipline, but we expect this to even out over time. No, it won't. Because all you've done is you've painted a bullseye on a specific group of kids and said, you can wail on those kids and we can and will do nothing about it. And we have experienced that in my home, and I guarantee it well, and I hear from other parents who've experienced it in theirs. Finally, the idea of parens patria. Literally, the fatherland is the parent. The idea that children belong to the state. We've seen it from news commentators, and so not only did you not build that, you didn't birth that. Do you know the worst thing about all of this? The worst thing? As I said, it's not my list. It's Adolf Hitler circa 1932. It was his stated goals for what he would do to seize control of the government and the education in Germany. And I challenge anyone to show me a single item on the list that is not taking place under Common Core. Some may say, well, our children don't really belong to the state. Really? Well, let's look at this. Mandatory access control. And I promise you, I didn't want to go Chicken Little, so I contacted a few techie guys and said, am I overreacting, or is this legit? They said, oh no, it's worse than that. And they proceeded to tell me we don't even want to go there. What it is, when the government creates a database, they create an owner of that data. And very quietly, they declared themselves the owner. They and multinational corporations like Pearson declared themselves the owner of our children's data points. That birthmark, that retinal eye scan, that social security number, that name, in a very real sense, no longer belong to your family or your child. They are the product of multinational corporations and a federal government. Because whatever comes in to the state database, Tennessee Race to the Top 360, he talks about it, it gets forwarded to DC. By the way, TN Race to the Top 360 discusses building a 360-degree view of your child's life. Their social interactions, their religious and political affiliations, their discipline issues, any psychiatric or medical issues, their response to controversial topics from teachers. It's wrong. How about this? Grit and tenacity, which are things we all want our kids to have. If you go to page 44, you will see images of pressure mice and posture analysis seats and skin conductance sensors and facial expression cameras. Okay, this is a Department of Ed document. And I'm not saying that your kids are going to school and getting hooked at that day, because their complaint in the document isn't, oh, this is bad stuff. Their complaint in the document is right now it's cost prohibitive. It never even occurs to them that they don't have the right to do these things. And in fact, well, we've heard in Florida, we know in Florida, they've used retinal eye scans you had to have one to get on a school bus. In Texas, they're using RFID chips in the student ID cards, and you can't get lunch without it. And I'm sorry, children in Williamson County, if you didn't go in the database, you were denied services. And many of us gave specific, we forbid it. And it happened anyway. And by the way, dozens and dozens of families forbid it. Wave at me if you know families that said, I forbid it, and it happened anyway.
Are you talking about InfoSnap?
InfoSnap, and you said, don't want it, forbid it with my kids, they did it to you anyway. The other thing that's disturbing is they've talked about, well, you go to the ed documents, and there are articles all over the place about, well, you know, now that we have all of this data, think about how much money schools would have if we started to sell it. And again, you don't get to say no, because it doesn't belong to you or your family or your children anymore. It belongs to the government and multinational corporations. Ask yourself this. How often do your kids' major tests and major papers come home? They don't. They don't. And I let Dr. Looney know I expect it to come home within 40 days. And I picked 40 days because that was the amount of time they gave themselves to reply to FERPA and FOIA. I want it home within 40 days. We are past the semester, and I have yet to see a single piece of work come home on my child. I don't have the right. Again, so can we really say that our children, that the government hasn't decided that our children belong to them? Okay, we need to go on. In addition to, I'm sorry. Okay, here's something else to think about. Practically, we've got high stakes testing going on. Oh, it's all about the testing, it's all about the testing, it's all about the testing. Well, this week in Pennsylvania, people were getting arrested. And why? For score rigging on the high-stakes tests. Michelle Reed, the champion of Students First, she lost her job in D.C. among allegations that test scores were rigged to make things look higher. Whenever you set up a scenario where individuals' pay is based on a certain score and there is no way for anyone else to check it, I'm sorry, you have set it up. It is going to happen. In addition to data, several other buzzwords with Common Core, and I'll run through these really quick. Rigorous. Rigorous used to mean challenging, demanding some standards that you had to strive for. In Common Core, they're actually delayed. In fact, yes, I am the kind of woman who calls Singapore to get confirmation. And these Singapore math standards that are Common Core compliant are 3 years. 3 years behind the non-compliant core, the non-compliant Singapore. The same with Saxon math. Again, worth noting that Commissioner Huffman's daughter goes to Harpeth Hall, and the president's daughters go to Sidwell Friends, and I've called both of those schools as well. And guess what they're not following? Yeah. Okay, another one we've heard is globally competitive. We want our children to be globally competitive. Well, what does it take to be globally competitive? Qualification and price. Okay. Something that can be made in the Philippines for $2 is going to cost you roughly $60 to make in Norway. All right? So, our children need to be prepared to offer something that is qualitatively different or accept a much lower quality of life. For example, if our children have the same standards as the Chinese, then they must be prepared to adjust their lives to a Chinese standard of living. In other words, they can't assemble radios. They need to be able to invent a microcomputer. Or they need to accept a Chinese or a Filipino standard of life. Those are just basic economics. We're told they'll be prepared for careers of the future and solving problems that don't exist. Well, unless we load these panels with psychics and prophets, it's ridiculous to even suggest that it can be done. You can't know what's coming. And in fact, I remember visiting Tomorrowland at Disney in the 70s. And they told us that by now we'd all be zipping around town in our hovercrafts. And the president might have a great big box with a phone in his car. The first time some of us saw a fax machine, it seemed like magic. And now, fax machines, road maps, point-and-shoot cameras, they're all basically gone, and they were killed by the iPhone, and who could have seen that one coming a couple decades ago? I'm going to be wrapped. Okay, all right. There's a thing called Zhao. Zhao is a guy who emigrated from China, and where he was from, that Zhao had, the only thing he was allowed to do, he's a big think tank guy now, the only thing he was allowed to do was to learn to herd water buffalo, because that's what the Chinese government decided that boys in his village needed to learn to do. And the girls all learned sewing. The problem being, all of a sudden, China opened up. And all of a sudden, workers were needed in the city. But Zhao didn't know how to do anything, because the only thing that the government knew everything that he needed to know, and that was herding water buffalo, which suddenly became a worthless skill. And if we're locking our kids into these roles, that's what we're preparing to do to them. I know the governor is traveling the state, and he's making a big deal about the test scores. Well, the fact is, the test scores that are being bragged about predate Common Core. The more recent TIMSS scores, which are internationally benchmarked, show Tennessee to be one of only 6 states moving backwards academically. Real quick, I'm going to wrap up here, okay? All the time. China, China, China. Well, the Chinese are getting these scores in their education. The Chinese are doing this, and the Chinese are doing that. Well, let's look at China. Chinese students by high school are expected to spend 13 hours in school a day, at least 6 days a week. They're out of bed by 5:30 in the morning. They finish their first class by 7:30. They get a 1-hour break for lunch, a 2-hour break for dinner. They're done with their last class by 10:30 at night. They have one test, the Guaikai, that determines the entire course of their life. If you do well on that, your family are celebrities for a year like American Idol. If you do poorly, well, I'll just put it to you this way, they have one of the highest academic suicide rates in the world, because if you don't do well, you're doomed. And high test scores have nothing to do with standard of living or long-term success. See, Finland, if you look at TIM scores and you look at standard of living, is a much, much, much better model. And what does Finland do? Finland, no school before the age of 7, because testing is too stressful for children and it deprives them of the right to be a child. There is no homework. Because mountains of homework after school leaves children stressed out, needing medication, fat, depressed, and sleep deprived. Sound familiar? There are almost no standardized tests. There is very, very low per child student spending. By the way, again, highest scores, standard of living around. Extremely limited tech, no central control at all. But what do they have? They have small class size, and they have unrestricted parental access to the classroom. So let me just say this. Even if Common Core was affordable, which it's not, even if Common Core tests and technology worked, which they don't, and there are lawsuits forming up all over the country, New York and others, even if Common Core is the best development in education since the beginning of time, which it's not, the government only rules at the consent of the people. And the people are saying, we don't want it, and that in and of itself should be enough. It is time to say, keep your standards, keep your money, keep your tests. We will reclaim our schools, our children, and our liberty. Can I add one more thing really quickly? And I just feel I'd be remiss if I hadn't added this. Isaiah 59 talks about a time when violence breaks out in the land. And there's destruction all around, and there's chaos, and nobody can figure out why this is happening. And the word from the Lord comes down, and it says, and judgment is turned away backward, and justice stands at a distance, for truth is fallen in the streets. So equality cannot enter, because yes, truth is fallen. And we are at a state that is so far gone that right now at the Capitol there's a bill, I think it's 1129, and all it's saying is that we're going to require that our children's history be true. And it'll take a miracle to get it out of committee. So we need to pray, we need to work, we need to let people know we love them. So that's it. And by the way, the guys we have here are doing a good job. Glenn was there. I've been mean to Glenn a couple times, and I'll say Glenn was there doing his job and doing the right thing. And I will say, I'll give Jack the nicest compliment a politician can get. Jack has never ever lied to me. I haven't always agreed with him, but I can say he's beyond honest. So we don't need to beat these guys up, but we need to encourage the education people, the other delegates. We need to let them know, you know, we need truth if we need this nation to be what it used to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, is everyone fired up now? Dang.
Sorry.
All right, no, that's okay, babe. Listen. Okay, now that you've heard all this, and we could be here for a week telling you more, I'm just telling you. We've made some, okay, so now that you know all this, what are you going to do about it? In this room here, I made a sheet on blue paper, and it is everyone on the Senate and the House education committees. They are right now looking at bills that have been introduced to stop this Common Core nonsense. I want every one of you all to call the people on this list. I called everybody on this list. It took me 23 minutes. And this is what people say, because I used to say it too until somebody helped me. Here's what we do. You want to do this with me? Come up here, Virginia. Okay, let's just say you've never called, who has never called, well, no. Who has called a legislator before? Okay, great, all right, well, then you don't really need this, but pretend like you're the aide in the office. So, Green.
Hello.
Yes, is this Senator Blah Blah's office?
It is.
Okay, great. This is Hannah Tibley. I'm calling from Franklin, and I'm calling about, and you put in the issue that you're concerned about, and the reason that I'm against da-da-da or for da-da-da is because of da-da-da. And so what she's going to do is she's going to take your name, maybe your phone number, maybe your email address. When you call the office, you're not going to talk to the official, you're going to talk to an aide or an assistant. They will write it down, and it'll go in the column as so-and-so is against Common Core. These people need to hear from you. Thank you. Anyway, so what I've done, and I'm going to email everybody that was here tonight. I just made this, I'm just a regular mom. I'm a nurse by trade, and I just am with these moms who care about our country, and so I thought I better get a little template. So you just fill in whatever is bothering you, and this is what the template you can use on any topic to call your legislator. Every person on the House and the Senate Education Committee is on the blue sheet, okay? Now, Harry Brooks is the chairman of the House Committee, and Dolores Gresham is the chairman of the Senate Committee. You guys need to be ringing their phones off the hook, and I've got their phone number about this, but also they care, and this is just human nature, they care more if you live in the district where they are, because they're going to want to win re-election. And so if I call Harry Brooks in Knoxville, which I did, you know, who knows if they really cared what I thought in Franklin. So if you know anybody in Knoxville, which is where Harry Brooks is from, and I think Dolores Gresham is from Tiptonville, is that right? Anyway, anyway, so what's this? Okay. Next Tuesday, the subcommittee that's going to hear bills about Common Core is at 9 o'clock, the subcommittee. We need to fill those chairs. The full committee's at noon, and what else, Julie?
There's another meeting at 3.
And there's another meeting at 3. Anyway, come pick up everyone on the Education Committee, and if you know anybody that lives in Knoxville or whatever district Dolores Gresham is, you need to call them, whether it's your family members, your cousins, your sorority sister, your whatever. Because when they answer the phone, they look at the area code, and if you don't live in their district, they're like, okay, well, so what? They're not my constituent, and that's just the honest truth of it. And then also, I made these sheets a call to action. What's next? Who should you be calling? Well, Bill Haslam for one, Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey, Speaker Beth Harwell, and all kinds of people, and some of them are here tonight. Also have tons of websites. Every state in this union has a group called Stock Common Core in, and then name the state, okay? This is a nationwide issue, and this is not Republican, Democrat, anything. This is an education issue. Diane Ravitch is a national expert on education reform. If you're a teacher, you know who Diane Ravitch is. And she has a great blog, Jane Robbins. I won't read it to you, but please get one of these and do your own homework. Don't believe what we said, do your own homework, but please just save yourself time and believe what we said. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? I see our legislators are trying to scoot out, so does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to say? Questions?
I have a question. I want to ask the legislature.
Okay. Lynn,
I want to ask
Jack, Charles.
I just want to ask a question
Don't
about
leave.
what are you going to do to take this forward so they can get past committee? Because a lot of things, bills are written and they just can't get past the committee because they don't have any substance or they don't have any teeth. So what we want to know is where you stand,
Okay.
what
Yes.
you're doing right now,
Yes.
and what's going to happen in committee.
Right. Let me start with the first question. And
You ever
There-
got this?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. right now, there are several legislators, including myself and Charles and Jack, that have, if I use the word grave concern on Common Core, that's probably not strong enough.
Okay, good.
We are supporting an individual, Rick Womack, out of Murfreesboro, who's running a bill that will delay Common Core for 3 years. He has a second bill that will delete Park. Now, for anything to be passed, it has to go through subcommittee in the House, and then a committee system in the House, and a committee system in the Senate. Common Core will be implemented unless we can get it through the committee system. I would say right now the chances are slim that a delay of Common Core will pass. And that's just my assessment. That doesn't mean it's so. It's just my assessment. Okay? Now, when it comes to Park, that is not only concerns about data mining and information getting out and gleaming personal information. The other concern about Park is the cost. And so all of a sudden you've got several factors that are groups that are getting together and say, let's re-examine Park because it's a financial burden on our communities, on our local government, as well as the other concerns. That has a chance of getting through the committee system and delaying the Park testing. That is simply my analysis. These guys might look at it differently. I'll say that so, with that in mind, with the chance of what we want first not happening, there are several of us that are putting legislation together that addresses how textbooks are chosen. And at a minimum, if we can get good material, accurate material with non-bias in our textbooks, then that's at least 2/3 of the battle. And Charles and Jack are supportive of reassessing how we pick textbooks. One of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to let the legislature pick the committee, not the governor. Not that there's anything wrong with the governor, but I think we need legislative accountability on the people that oversee who pick our textbooks. Parents will have access by state law to the books. They'll have the ability to give the input. And then when it moves to the local level, we will give full authority to the local education, the school boards, to pick and or accept and or reject curriculum, textbooks. And concurrently, parents will be on committees that the school boards must listen to. So in essence, we're opening this up so parents will have a direct say and local school boards will have the ultimate yes or no on textbooks. That, and combined with Sheila Butt out of Murray County, is putting a bill together that if the direct delay of Park fails, her bill says whatever's gleaned in the classroom from our students must be made known to parents. Whatever's gleaned in the classroom must be cannot be intrusive, and it stays within the state. And so she's putting some parameters on that as well. So those are two things that we're supporting as well. That if our first effort fails, we'll have a backup plan. That's where we are.
There's your plan B. So in reality, we have little chance of getting Common Core delayed out of the committee.
That's my
what they
opinion.
said about income tax.
That's my
There was a time when people were saying income tax is a done deal.
That's
And
true.
that there was
That's
no way to, and so while at one time income tax was a done deal, we don't have income tax.
So
That's
Glenn,
exactly
what can the people here do to help keep it from getting killed in committee? And I trust that you and Jack and Charles, in whatever way that you can, because it'll be found out who let it get killed in committee and,
Right.
anyway.
Well, and
What can the people do
Right.
here to keep it, to help
Your
keep it
first
from getting
step
killed in committee?
is to get your legislative delegation, well, we're here, okay?
Okay.
So that's, the first step is accomplished. What's against us is none of us serve on education. So we have no say on these things in education subcommittee or full committee, because we don't serve on those committees. So the next thing, the third step I would do is, if you have friends in the other districts across the state, make sure they contact their legislators. I gotta be honest, we are overwhelmed. So when someone from Memphis calls me, I'm glad they call, but their opinion is not a factor. I'll just be honest with you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we need to find people in
All across
Knox
the state.
County, where Harry Brooks district is, and Dolores Gresham, who are
Where's
the,
Dolores? Where's
I think it's
South
Tiptonville. It's on,
West Tennessee.
West
yeah,
Tennessee.
anyway, okay.
Summerville.
So, okay.
I hope I wasn't too long. I hope I was succinct.
No, that was,
Okay.
thank you. Well, the main thing, this is just a small group of people, but I'm a grandmother of 8, and they're all here in Williamson County, I have 5 children. And I can tell you, there are pockets of parents everywhere that are gathering in living rooms right now. And the consequences are going to be grave to legislatures who fail to listen. Because parents are waking up. My children were hard to crack, and it's hard to believe they're my children sometimes. But they're really waking up. And I came from a ball game, and I told these children, like these parents, that I was coming. They said, "Please get all the information you can for us because we're so concerned."
Anybody else have a
Yeah.
question? I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Virginia, I thought you finished.
No, I'm
Anybody else have a question or a
I
comment
just,
or?
the main thing I want to say is this is a small group, but there's a lot of them.